Dear truckers of the world, what kind of weird, filthy, fun or shocking stories can you tell us that you encountered on highway service stations? This story's actually a sad one, but it's the only notable one. My grandfather told me outside of the usual ran into a lot lizard, told her to duck off. A few years ago, my grandfather had a usual stop he went to and grabbed breakfast at. Well, there was another trucker that was there at the same time he was, and since it was 2-3 in the morning, they talked and became buddies. I wouldn't say they were friends, but they were friendly with each other enough for me to hear about him sometimes. One week, the guy doesn't show up at all. Grandpa thinks nothing of it until the second week, when he asks someone what happened to the guy. Turns out, dude broke down in the middle of nowhere during the winter. I forget specifics, but he was in his vehicle, forget if it was car or truck, long enough to get frostbite on all of his fingers, causing them to have to be amputated when he got to the hospital. Poor guy was out of a job, and my grandfather was down a friendly guy he could talk to when he stopped. Didn't even get his phone number. Had a few interesting ones over the last few years. The one that stands out the most was being woken up by gunshots at 4 in the morning at a truck stop just outside of Alabama. I got out of my bunk and there was some big, burly dude wearing nothing but a pair of flip-flops and a wife beater, waving a gun around and screaming that some lot lizard hooker had stolen his money. Police showed up a few minutes later. He refused to cooperate. Finally, this female cop tased him while another one tackled him. Glad nobody got seriously hurt, but was hilarious when the cops tased him and dragged him off in his flip-flops and nothing else, since he had thrown his shirt at one of the cops. Another time, in Texas, I saw a Japanese guy with his family walking around a truck stop lot. He kept walking up to drivers, would talk a few minutes, then walk away. Didn't think much of it until I started to go inside and he approached me and my co-driver. I asked if there was something I could help him with and he asked if there were any truck stop ladies around. I asked why he wanted a lot lizard, especially with his wife and kids there, and he said that he wanted to get a picture of his family with one, since it was the first time his family had ever stopped at a truck stop, and they had already taken a picture with a driver, a truck, and by the diesel pumps. I just wished him good luck and went about my business. Not a trucker but work in the industry. Probably once or twice a year a trucker will call me and tell me he can't pick up a load because he shit his pants. Then they email me pictures to prove it. 10-year veteran from the trucker life. Nothing crazy at a truck stop, but in Nebraska during the summer a cattle truck had flipped, taking a turn too fast, fully loaded, cow parts thrown everywhere. It looked like a movie. Ugh. It's hard to get the image of butchered cows laying everywhere on the interstate out of your head. This was years ago, but I was driving in St. Paul near the state fairgrounds and a fair-sized truck got in an accident. I was loaded with live chickens and there were chickens running all over the place. Laughed my ass off at all the housewives trying to chase down a chicken dinner. I can see it clear as day in my mind, this quite large woman hustling down the sidewalk with a chicken under each arm. Good times. Ex-trucker here. Backstory: went through a time where I wanted to do enforcement work, scale house, etc. Got a chance to work at a inspection station for a day. Call comes over the radio for a truck having a hard time keeping the lane, hitting the rumble strips, possibly drunk. He's approaching the station officer. I am with, turns on the lights and figures he'll pull in and we can talk to them. Guy pulls around back for inspection. Officer asks if I can go out back and talk to him, make sure he has all his documents in order and he'll be out in a minute. I walk up to the truck, older man driving, make sure he's got his documents. Noticed his eyes were red and he appeared to have just gotten through a good tear fest. I ask him if he's okay and he begins to say he was driving and was having a breakdown thinking about his wife who passed away and he thought he was fine but it was catching up with him. The story of his wife's passing was they drove together for quite some time. They stopped at a truck stop for dinner and to stop for some sleep. He stopped by the entrance to the truck stop so she could go in and get food ordered. It's late at night, she gets out, he heard the door close and grabbed a gear and went to go find a spot. Well, she fell on the way out and he had not noticed over the sound of the motor. When he drove away he crushed her with the truck as she laid on the concrete. I stood there white-faced and shocked about this tragic story. The kicker to all this is myself at the time being a relatively green CDL driver asked when it happened. It was the week before and he couldn't afford to take time off because he was an owner-operator barely scraping by, and I remember him saying to me, "I care, but the bank don't give a duck." So here I sit, poor soul out there dealing with that news. I think about him from time to time. To this day I am always hyper-aware of people near any vehicle or equipment I am operating. Be safe out there. Edit. Oh wow, thanks folks for the awards and upticks. I hope that if you drive or are a pedestrian, always keep a lookout. It can happen anywhere. At the time, I was happily in a monogamy relationship. I had just delivered my load to Stockton, California from San Diego. I was beat to say the least. I got some grub and settled down in the major truck stop. Cue the lot lizard scene. She was beautiful. The lifestyle was showing in her walk face. Yet she still put on a smile. She approached my truck shyly at first. I think more out of habit. She asked if I wanted any company. In a friendly, joking manner I said my mother wouldn't approve and that she tells my GF everything. We both laugh. What made this stick in my memory is her being respectful after the joke. Most would try harder, much harder. Your GF won't know. She's literally hundreds of miles away, etc. Instead she asked if it was okay to chat with me for a while. After I told her my day and where I went, it was her turn. She tells me there are usually regulars, but tonight nobody was showing up for her. I thought for sure her next line was going to be if I could spare any money. She asked, "Do you have any snacks?" My heart only had time to break for a fraction of a second. I responded so quickly because I did not want her to feel any worse. There was so much aura and happiness about her and pride to match. I'd assumed. I did a comedian bit voice and said, "I literally just bought one of everything from the shelves inside. Take your pick." It was only slightly an exaggeration. My bag was junk food heaven. She takes out a jerky stick and a strawberry Pop-Tart. For the next 30 minutes she told me her adventures. She started from the Bronx, realized she had an adult talent she enjoyed and decided to travel. At the time, it appeared she had been to more places than I had. She traveled alone mostly. Sometimes she had a pimp, sometimes she didn't. For some strange reason she only smokes when traveling in the South. She was excited about her plans to go to Utah next week. There was zero regret in her eyes, only happiness. She finishes her snacks, says thanks, chats a bit more and then wanders off into the night. Coolest lot lizard ever. She owned that shit. This happened to an uncle of mine. He was new and had a two-person buddy system with a lady who was his instructor. Uncle's wife did not like her at all and thought she was going to seduce him. 2 days into a drive, Uncle is going to the truck stop to eat, goes back to the truck, and opens the door. Turns out the instructor was a lesbian, and was preoccupied with a sex worker. The instructor and the sex worker got married about 5 months later, and they spend their Christmases with all of us because their own families have disowned them. They're very happy. Our family recipes have become their family recipes. The instructor will wait until her wife's out of earshot and say, "Best $20 I ever spent." I was on the road a little over a year and saw someone way out on an interstate waving down cars. I stopped and found out that she was kidnapped something like 3 months ago. She called her husband on my phone after I called the cops. He called me back like an hour later and cussed me out because I wasn't still with her. LOL. He saw her the next day in the hospital after she was admitted for observation. Edit. Thank you for the awards. I just have to say that I was lucky to be in the right place and the right time to help. Please take a basic first aid class and pass it on. Edit 2. I won't go deep into her story because I want to stay anonymous. Here's what I will say. She was just being held by a group of people. They didn't harm her besides not letting her go. No one got arrested for the crime that I know of. She is still recovering from this ordeal and there was no clear motive. I drove interstate for a few months many years ago. I was on I-5, going through Salem. A car pulled even with me and slowed down. When I looked down, there was a woman in the passenger seat buck naked with the dome light on. When she saw me looking, she started playing with herself. Her boyfriend was driving. I slowed down a little trying to find my exit and they zoomed off to catch another truck. I was hungry and pulled into a rundown diner that barely got my rig into safely. But I didn't care. I was hungry and there was no truck stop around for a long time. The girl flipping burgers on a old blackened grill had a smoke hanging out of her mouth. She was big, greasy, pimply. She was talking and joking and cohorting more with the customers than watching the food. Desperate, I ordered a grilled ham and cheese and watched her barely pay attention to it as it sizzled on the grill. I finally got the sandwich and it was the best damn grilled ham and cheese I ever ate. That was 20 years ago and I still think of that sandwich. Going on 8 years now and I have seen a lot, but one always sticks out. I am at a red light behind a few cars and see this lady walking on the sidewalk along my driver's side. On the other side of the sidewalk she is walking is a Burger King with the drive-thru next to the sidewalk, well as me and all the cars in line waiting and the poor car at the drive-thru and person working there. This lady stops, pulls down her pants and takes the biggest shit I have ever seen, pulls pants back up and keeps on walking. I will never forget the face of the drive-thru driver and worker's face as they were maybe 5 feet from the action. Thank you Fullerton Ka. So, there is an interchange between I-5 and 101. It's an uneven roadway, with only 2 lanes, and it's got a hard bank on it. Anyways, a trucker is going hard into the corner, and someone cuts him from low, and he corrects, but doesn't hold the edge, and ends up on his side, with the load everywhere. That load, thousands of live chickens. Now, lots of them die on collision, but many of them live, and they are ducking everywhere on the freeway, across all lanes, in all directions, on both highways. So, it takes them a few hours to clear the highway of the live chickens, and most of the remains of the dead ones. Not 2 weeks later, at the same interchange, just down the road about 500 yards, a watermelon truck rolls over. I shit you not, watermelons everywhere. Fortunately, they don't run, but still, a huge mess. Sadly, the beer trucks were all fine that week, but, around here, it's a pretty famous story, almost too good to believe, but there it was. I've only been doing OTR for about 2 years now. I'd say the weirdest thing to happen to me was while I was asleep in my bunk at a truck stop. Someone tried to open my door. It woke me up out of a dead sleep cause it sounded like they were really trying hard to open it. My doors were locked, so I put a shirt on and sat in the driver's seat. I saw a small woman in my side mirror walking away and then saw her try another truck store. After seeing her do this about 4 times I figured she was a lot lizard. She looked pretty young, so I called the police and let them come check on her. They came and spoke with her. She tried to run from them at first, but I just wanted to make sure she was okay. They let her go and some guy in a beat-up car picked her up and she left. Also, I've been flashed several times while driving. Not a trucker. My dad died when I was a teenager. With that being said, it put a lot of strain on me. My mother's already rocky relationship, coupled with an evil stepfather, it was a recipe for disaster. Or, rather, a recipe for an explosion. My mother and I had our more toxic than usual daily screaming match. This time I wanted to prove a point. What that point was, I can't remember what my little teenage brain was trying to do, but it didn't work. I took off in a hoodie, PJ shorts to my step-aunt's house across town. The town we lived in was podunk to say the least. It was on a major highway in the PNW. That being said, truckers consistently passed through. Now I don't know if it was my mother's spider sense or what, but she decided to causally follow me down the highway back roads. So I am walking, using my hand-me-down flip phone to play some Pink song I recorded off the radio. Really just minding my business. I see this truck pass by me on the highway. I keep walking. He passes by me again. I keep walking with the anthem Ducking Perfect by Pink fueling every step. He passes by me a third time. I only start to get suspicious when he pulls off in the parking lot of an abandoned diner. I was past him with a brave face, trying not to show I was scared. I was about 13 minutes away from my step-aunt's house. Then, I hear his footsteps behind me. He tries to flag me down, but I keep walking. He finally catches up to me. His main attempts at starting conversation with me were, "You have pretty eyes," when he was very clearly not looking at my eyes. "You wanna come in my truck? I can give you a ride." I was very obviously younger than 18, let alone, I was very noticeably younger than 15. "What's your name? Where do you live?" etc., etc. This was about the time I started to get scared. This was also about the time where my mom pulled up behind me and started to tear him up. Thank God she did. With that I booked IT to my step-aunt's house. I can't remember anything really after that. My mom's relationship was toxic for about 11 years after that. It's finally healing today. Even though I thought she was overdramatic then, I see now as an adult she was just being mama bear. Not a trucker but work in a rail yard where a lot of truckers come go. Truckers bring their very underdressed lady friends along and let them walk around. Truckers go in between rail cars and piss and shit. I can't count how many times I've seen trucker penis. My yard is pretty trashy, as in when I walk tracks I see truckers openly throw trash bags out their windows, along with their per bottles and shit bags. I've seen truckers park in the crane path lane and get bulldozed over. I've seen truckers try to beat trains and get bulldozed through. For us rail workers, most of the things we see truckers do is shocking. We see a lot of filth and have to work stand and sit in it too. There's 2 porta potties for the whole yard and see anywhere from 1K to 2K truckers in out each shift, so don't get me started on the porta potties. As a female I never go in them. Also I can't count how many times I've almost gotten hit by truckers going over the speed limit in the yard. Can't count how many truckers almost hit other truckers cause they are too busy on their phones. Can't count how many truckers drive off the rails. So yeah, truckers are a different breed. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit universe.